The Vietnam War. In this episode of Alan the History Guy, we had the honor of interviewing a real-life Vietnam veteran.
Being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
Hi, this is an interview with Cliff Davis. He's a Vietnam veteran. So, here we go. Were you drafted into the Army or did you voluntarily join?
I joined.
Joined. Why?
You have to put it in the context of when I joined out of high school in 1966. It was right before all the protests that went on around about the Vietnam War.
Right,
It was
right.
pre that. And the way that I was brought up from my family was to believe there was an obligation to serve your country. At the time, I didn't want to go to university.
Right.
I didn't go to university until after I got out of the Army. So that seemed to be the right thing to do, so that's why I did it.
Right. And what was your duty or position in the Army while you served?
I was enlisted, man. When I got out of the Army, I was a sergeant.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I forgot to ask you this earlier, but from what period to what period did you serve in the Army and in Nam?
From 1966 to 1970, I was in Vietnam from 1968 to 1970.
Right.
I was something called a LRP, which is a long-range reconnaissance patrol. So I did a lot of recon work.
Recon?
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
Some examples would be we would get some intelligence that there might be enemy movement going on in a particular area. We worked in small teams, usually 4-man teams, sometimes 6-man teams, and we would go out and basically try to confirm if there was enemy movement, or sometimes we would just be suspicious. We would go set up listening posts and watch and see and then report back enemy movement. Sometimes we would call in airstrikes on it. That was the general gist of what we did.
Wow. Well, I think you were for the war before you joined the Army, but were you for the war during your period in the Army, and are you for the war now? Do you think that the war was?
Well, there's been a lot of time and maturity, that's occurred.
Yeah.
When I was 18 years old, I had no idea about the war and the politics or anything. It just seemed to be what I should do. My father served in World War II. I was very proud of that.
Wow.
And instilled that kind of feeling to myself. So yeah, when I went, I was pretty excited, actually. And shows you I really wasn't thinking very clearly, because once I got there, it was life-changing, much different than what I thought it would be. It's not like the movies by any means. But I have to tell you, the whole time that I was there, I spent 2 tours there, so 2 years.
Right.
I always thought I was still doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until later years, when I came back and started a family and got a job and all that, it was a useless war.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not in favor of it. No.
No.
I think personally it was a mistake for the United States to get into it.
And why?
I think I can only guess this is that it became a political issue and very difficult, like the Iraq War now.
Yeah.
It's very political. I think there's a lot of people who want to pull out, but it's a face issue and they don't know quite how to do it. And in Vietnam, which is a shame, is we lost that war.
Yeah.
A
lot of people don't think that you guys lost the war, though.
Yeah. I think we did.
Yeah.
We lost 50-some thousand lives.
All right.
Some were my friends. who got killed. It was wasteful, I thought. Nothing happened. You just go out and you fight a war, you kill people, people try to kill you, and for what? I mean, there wasn't anything at the end of that whole process that did anybody any good. It was a lot of American lives, not just Americans, you know, Australians, British, South Vietnamese, innocent people.
So it wasn't worth
lost
it.
their lives. I don't think it was worth it, no.
Not worth it.
I don't see any benefit as a result of going to war.
Could you describe what the atmosphere was like in Vietnam at the time?
It was a very
Like what-
strange, surreal kind of place. For most of us, I get, coming from a small town where I came from, I'd never been outside of, or to a big city in my whole life, actually. But when I went to Vietnam, I found myself in a foreign land, foreign language, strange people, a war going on, very hot, very smelly, very backwards. I mean, the first thing hit me when I got off the plane was the smell and the heat. It's like walking into an oven and a very distinct smell.
Do you have any stories that, or experiences that maybe you could share with us?
I will say there were some good experiences. You know, you get a bunch of young kids together, and we had, you just have a way of making it work. Whether you create parties, you know, you do some kind of naughty things where we would go to the supply kitchen and we would steal steaks from the officers and eggs and stuff, and then we would go do our own barbecue. And we were all young, but we were able to get a hold of beer and alcohol, so we would drink a lot and be crazy. I mean, I was one story. I was in an area called Da Nang, a place called Red Beach, and we were literally in tents out on the beach. And the supply sergeant had been able to get a speedboat and some surfboards, so we had some time that we were out in the China Sea and
surfing,
water skiing and trying to surf. And that kind of thing.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever read a book called The Things They Carry by Tim O'Brien?
I have not. No.
No. All right.
I don't watch movies about Vietnam much, and I don't read much about Vietnam. I mean, I don't need to read a book about Vietnam.
Exactly.
I was there.
Well, how do you think the war has changed the United States and Vietnam?
I think it's one of those tipping points in U.S. history. Up until the Vietnam War, we won. The U.S. won, and the American soldier was respected, and was sort of like the poster boy. You know, they always showed that, and that's how I grew up thinking about the war. In the '60s, the whole world kind of changed. You had the hippie movement, I guess is what they call it. But a lot of protesting. And it got America's attention. So a lot of people were against the war. When I came home from Vietnam, I mean, literally, we were on a bus from the airport going to our out processing area. There were people lined up on the streets, spitting at us, throwing things at us, instead of welcoming us home. You know, where, you know, you see in the World War II kind of things, that my dad tells me is, you know, there were big parades when the soldiers came back, and they were appreciative of the sacrifice, but it wasn't that way.
Must have been really tough.
Yeah, I was pretty angry in those days and ashamed. I didn't tell anybody that I was in Vietnam. When I came back, you know, that wasn't something I went around and talked about. You got to remember the war was fought with kids, 18 years old, 19 years old, maybe 20. That's who fights war, is not, you know, older people. They're just kids.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't know any better.
Do you ever think that you'll forget about Vietnam, or
Never.
Never.
No, it's in my mind forever.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly